Hey everybody, welcome to TJsRC. Today we're going to take a look at how I stopped the Desert Lizard internal spring shocks from leaking where the cap screws into the shock body. The stock O-rings just didn't seem to be doing the job, so I came up with what I think is a better solution. Stick around. After I made that first video on how to set up these Desert Lizard internal spring shocks to run them in a droop setup, they worked great all summer long into the fall, and then once winter and cold weather hit, I noticed after running in a particularly cold day that they started leaking around this area here where this cap seals to the body. I assumed it was this small O-ring here, so I immediately replaced that with the extra O-ring that comes in the kit with the shocks. Put them back together, went out again in the cold, and a couple of them leaked again in this area. So I took them off, put them on a shelf, and thought I'll figure it out later. Put the backup shocks back on the Bronco and continued to make some videos. But I got a lot of questions about what would happen to those shocks. How come I wasn't using them? So after letting them sit on the shelf and let the thought percolate in the back of my brain since last summer, I came up with the solution that I wanted to try. And that was to take the O-rings that they use, swap them out for a much thicker O-ring. So I went on to Amazon, looking up hydraulic grade O-rings, and found this kit. Lots of various sizes. If you wanted to go this route, you don't have to buy a kit with so many different sizes in them. But I thought to myself, some of these various sizes could come in handy at a later date for various things. So I went ahead and got the kit with all the different sizes in it. And sure enough, there was a size in the kit that's really close to the size I need, but is a little thicker. And so that is what we're going to install, and then we're going to reassemble the shocks, take the truck out for a run in the frigid cold, because we're in the middle of winter right now, and see if it makes a difference. First, I'm going to get the old O-ring off, and I'll show you a size comparison so that you can see just how much thicker this one is. I don't know how well the camera is going to pick up that size difference, but this one from the kit that I just ordered here is about 1.5 times as thick as the stock one. It is a tiny bit smaller in diameter, but it's very stretchy, and I think that it's going to fit just fine. You can see that it fills this channeled gap here much more fully than the stock one. So we're going to reassemble now. Before we reassemble this though, I got to go ahead and add just a little bit more shock oil. I'm running 22.5 weight, but that's only because I need to order some more various weights of shock oil, but that's what I got on hand right now, so that's what I'm using. And as always with these kinds of shocks, I like to carefully compress it all the way as I tighten down the cap. What you will notice using a much thicker O-ring is that this cap piece is not going to sit perfectly tight against the shock body here. There's going to be a small gap because this O-ring that we're using is much thicker than the stock one. So you don't want to over tighten it and have it shred the O-ring. You want it snugged. You should be able to feel that it's getting pretty snug as you turn it tight. There. I don't think we're going to want to go much tighter than that. We're going to go ahead and reinstall the shock onto the TRX4 and then take it out on the bumpy, snowy, cold trails and see if this helped to prevent the leaking through this area that we had previously. While we're at it, before I go to put this on the TRX4, I've had a lot of questions about what ball end I used up here at the top of these shocks for mounting it on the TRX4. What I've got here, it's just a spare ball end out of an old rod end, I believe. It doesn't snap in to the top of the shock body. If you've got this shock, you know that the ball ends don't snap into place. They just kind of sit in there. So what I did is I took a miscellaneous rubber O-ring and slid it over the end after I pushed the ball end into place. That way, once it's in place, then the top of the shock can't slide around because that rubber O-ring is there, but it still allows flex in all the different directions. For the bottom of the shock, I used the stock TRX4 rod ends that came on the stock TRX4 shocks, instead of using the ends that came with the Desert Lizard shocks. So we're going to pop this right back on the TRX4. There we go. We got it all installed. Now we're going to charge up the battery and head outside. All right, well, we got it all washed and dried off. So after that cold, snowy run, I went around and checked all the shocks, and sure enough, it appears that the fatter O-rings did solve the problem I had. Hopefully it'll help you guys if you're having a similar problem. If you're interested in how I set these shocks up in the droop setting that we're currently running, I do have a video for that. If you haven't seen that video yet of how I set these up to run in a forced droop setting, that video should be right over here in the corner. Thanks so much for watching. You guys are awesome, and we will see you next time.